I used to watch Trump in the elections. He'd put all the pretty girls behind him, Ivanka and all the wives, and then he's up there, implying the billions of dollars and the real estate stuff.
He's a silverback. I'll tell you, he did. Okay, now this.
And the monkey part of you says he's the monkey leader. And then later you say, his policies are this. Is there something there?
Yeah, the silverback gorilla, the kind of... Okay, the thing he did, which I thought was utterly brilliant, okay, as a piece of advertising. And nobody commented on this. It should have won a Grand Prix at Cannes for effectiveness.
Okay.
Do you remember there was a picture of him in his plane? Fantastic opulence of the plane.
Eating McDonald's.
Eating KFC. It was KFC.
Okay.
Even better, you see, right? And gravy,
Yeah.
He did have a knife and fork, which he was slightly ridiculed for.
I remember that.
But equally, if you're on a private plane, you're going to have cutlery. Or, why use plastic cutlery if you've got the metal stuff? And what was utterly brilliant about this was, if you think about it, it was incredibly lucid, because it said, I've got a plane, right? But I eat the same food you guys do. Now, the two things. One, Hillary didn't have her own plane. Okay, she didn't have fuck you money. If she had a plane, it was probably lent to her by Goldman Sachs, something, right? Okay. Second, you can't imagine Hillary eating KFC, can you?
No.
It would have been some avocado shit, or some weird. You can't imagine Hillary eating that stuff.
No.
And you can imagine Boris, can't you? Boris is a bit of a bit porky.
Yeah.
You can imagine Boris actually secretly sneaking off to the Colonel's finest establishment, for a couple of spicy hot wings.
I can see that, right? We can all see
You can
that.
see it.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the things that's vital about these people as well is that to us in London, we think politicians are people just like us. If you live in a normal part of the country, by which I mean not even outside the M25, if you just live towards the M25, okay, they're all drawn from this same bloody administrative caste of people who in the course of your everyday life you don't encounter very much, and when they do, they're a pain in the arse, like someone at the local council or a librarian or something, right?
Right.
And this administrative caste is actually... so let me get this right. I think the first Attlee cabinet, 45, okay, there were 7 people in the cabinet who had started their working life at the coalface in a mine, right?
In 1945.
1945, okay.
Wow.
As recently as the 1980s, certainly the Labour Party, to an extent the Conservative Party, the Conservative Party probably would have had a garagiste wing, which is people who started by, buying a garage. In the Labour Party, it would be much more likely they'd come through the union education system. But I think it was something like 18, 19, 20% of MPs only 20 years ago or 25 years ago had started their working life in a manual position.
Okay, so we forget that most politicians
the
today...
whole higher education system has created a racket.
I mean,
the higher education system exists to preserve middle-class privilege and to seek to solidify middle-class advantage.
Okay.
By writing the rules for success. The rules of the game are written in a way that middle-class people are uniquely well placed to play the game.
Middle class and upper middle class.
Yeah, and so
we're in a democracy, so you have to relate to the common man, or you won't get elected.
And in fairness, of course, one interesting thing about America is that what we forgot about Hillary, right, is that I was watching occasionally for reasons of slightly perhaps unhealthy. I'm a total Reaganophile in that, as a guy who, somehow knew how to present himself, speak, etc.
Back to what you
said,
right?
That kind of all shucks humility thing.
Better to have a leader than an administrator.
And the extraordinary thing about Reagan, I watched him appear for Roy Acuff's, I think it's his 90th birthday at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. And he comes in a white suit. The way he does it is different. And then, of course, YouTube being YouTube, it starts playing me Reagan porn, essentially. And you see Reagan, okay, George W., right? When he had a bit of spare time, he went to Texas to be honest, okay, he was the President of the United States. He had some sort of ranch in Texas, which, to be honest, if you gave it to me, I'm not even sure I'd even go there. Right? He was kind of clearing brush and scrub. Reagan, of course, and Nancy were riding around in horses. They had a kind of pickup truck.
In California.
Virtually every... Clinton had, for all his kind of cunning. he had that common touch. You can imagine Clinton sneaking off to a KFC, can't you, right?
Yeah, he used to go to McDonald's with his running crew. CIA runners, they would go to McDonald's.
So they'd all go there. Right. Now, the interesting thing is that nearly every American president of the last, I suppose George H.W. Bush was the one exception in that, didn't really know how to fake or genuinely reflect that part of the American, which is, if you're going to be an American president, that's fine, but you've got to be 25% regular guy in some way.
Okay, and Boris ticks that box.
Well, where he ticks that box weirdly, although he's an old Etonian classicist and grotesque philanderer, etc., etc. The philandering is, by the way, interesting, and I'll come to that in a second.
Does that also make you like the common man?
Well, it also is a bit silverback, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, I mean, Trump's doing the Stormy Daniels porn star thing, and no one cares. Might help him.
Of course, it is fair to remember that if you think about it, okay, to most people in the United States and the UK, certainly to most males, okay, the reaction to sudden wealth of Hugh Hefner makes much more sense than the reaction to sudden wealth of Mark Zuckerberg, doesn't it?
Okay, explain that.
Okay, well, a lot of people, if you said to them, what would you do if you had loads and loads of money suddenly? Okay, the answer basically, I live in a massive mansion in California surrounded by supermodels in bikinis, is to some extent a more normal reaction. And if we look at history, we read Petronius, we go back to the Roman emperors and so on, that's kind of what powerful people do. They don't go to a software company and spend the time staring at a bloody screen.
And then take all the money and give it away.
So having your own plane, I have to admit this, okay, there is one thing, having a plane with your own name on it, that's the last thing in my bucket list, which I have to say. Sneakily, I shouldn't really admit this.
You don't have that with Ogilvy plane?
No. But I mean, having a plane with Sutherland down the side, you've got to agree. Okay, that would be. I get slight envy of big haulage firms, don't you? Because there is a firm called Sutherland, which is a Caithness-based. That's where we're from. Okay. Caithness-based haulage firm, which I think takes things down to Smithfield Market. It's a meat haulage firm. And every now and then you see one of these massive kind of 18-wheelers with Sutherland in 18-foot high letters down the side. You go, fucking cool.
You get excited about that.
Even if you weren't making any money.
So there's something about Trump that does appeal to that common man.
Well, I mean, it is kind of like. It's always worth remembering at Oxbridge that you had Boris will know this very well. You had porters at Oxbridge, and the general thing of the porters, and to some extent the bed makers, okay, was they actually loved the boozers and the philanderers and despised the academics to a great extent.
Because they were more like them.
Because it seemed
they had a human side.
It was a more natural reaction to privilege in many ways, which is to take advantage of it and to enjoy it, than to spend your whole time in a library mugging up on the Delian Confederacy or something, And so... and
people don't apologize for it these days.
The one thing about Boris, Trump doesn't. I don't think I actually like him very much. I'm being really candid here. But the vital trick in marketing is if you can't put yourself in other people's shoes, you might as well pack up and go home, particularly as the real problem with marketing isn't just that it's very, very urban and London-centric. It's also, the problem with London is you're very homogeneous in terms of the age group and social group with which you hang out. Right. As soon as you move to suburbia, your next-door neighbours are 65, you have kids, you have parents at the school who are all drawn from a different milieu to some extent, okay? But in London, it's possible to have a kind of social circle which, in terms of age group and socioeconomic group, are barely a cigarette paper apart from each other. And so it's not difficult to put yourself in the shoes of anybody else going, essentially, I can imagine myself having a pint with Boris, right? Whereas I can't really imagine myself hanging out at a KFC with Hillary Clinton, for example.